Oh, right. So we're back again. We've got some new runs to do. I want to go and check everything as well. Oh, I've got another DVD to watch as well, haven't I? But let's chat to everyone first, make sure everyone's... I'm curious to what made you switch. Honestly, working the stage was getting boring, boss. Spitting and screaming at the world was fine and good when I was a kid, but it just doesn't do it for me anymore. Dragon Slayer wanted me to fight a real enemy, so I left the band behind and I turned to the shadows. He shrugs. I don't know. Guess I figured that'd be the best way to find one. Considering current events, I'd say that you're not worried about. Yeah, I guess not. Feels kind of daunting, truth be told, but it's exciting all the same. I've been looking for a worthy adversary for a while. It's kind of satisfying having a white whale to chase. Didn't know you know the white whale of Abraham? Yeah, of course, he grins. But it was one hell of a fight, wasn't it? How long have you been looking for a real enemy? Not too long, ever since I took down the last one. The last one? Of course, I might be able to sit around feeling pleased with myself. I followed the creator, or the Moon Maiden, but the Dragon Slayer ain't that kind of idol. If I'm not drinking, I'm fighting, and if I'm not doing either of those, I'm looking for a bigger, better fight to get in next time. Dodger pulls a flask from his jacket pocket and raises in salute. It's a rather remarkably simple coach to fight. Oh. Who was the last one? Gang boss, a great big orcish bastard called the Wild Schwinwer, or something. Led the local chapter of the Horde. I had my sights set on him for a while. They hurt a lot of people. I figured they'd pose a challenge. I wasn't wrong about that, but I took him out in the end. When's this pattern end? Well, boss, the way I figure it, it'll end when I pick a fight I can't win. He smiles sadly. Might be this one, maybe next. It'll be hard to top a great dragon. But that's the way the Dragon Slayer wants it, and who am I to refuse him? Abruptly turns. That's enough talk for today, boss. Besides, we've got other things to do, I'm sure. Thanks. Let's see if anyone's got any more. I could glance up from a PDA at the sound of your approach, Richard. This isn't the best of times. Body language is self-assured, but you can hear the anxiety in her voice. Something has worried her in a big way. Talk to me, Argo. If there's something that's put you on edge, I want to know what it is. There's a long pause. Fine, she turns her PDA so you can look at the screen. The image. Ooh. That greets you is a hollow pic of a real thin orc with jet black hair. Who am I looking at? His name is Yuli Kozlov, but he's better known by the handle The Engineer. He's a mercenary ex-Spetsnaz, one of the best in his field. I ran up against him in my KSK days. Tell me more. His specialties are social engineering and wet work. In practice, he spent most of his time paving the way for organised crime syndicates to seize new territory. He sets up bribes, takes out key members of the opposition, and forges alliances with existing street gangs. All of the groundwork that a syndicate needs. He's extremely bad news, Richard, and my contact spotted him in Shattelnetst. That's a little too close for comfort. Exactly. I've seen what the engineer can do up close. My KSK unit tracked him a few years ago. I had him in my sights of my rifle, but I was ordered to hold fire. We couldn't afford to give away our position. To this day, I regret obeying that order. I saw what happened to the town when he was softening up. After the syndicate moved in. And should I have to stop him before it's too late? What happened to that town? I can't allow it to happen again. Agreed. Do you know who he's working for now? Safest bet would be the Russian syndicate, but there's no telling. His client list is longer than you'd expect. Got any examples? Well, I know for a fact that he's worked for mafia groups operating inside and outside of Russia, and he's put in a lot of tie with the Lobachevsky's syndicate. He's taken contracts with the Triads as well. My contacts tell me he's even done a few jobs for Tamanos. That's one hell of a resume. Yeah, it is. She bites her lip and stares at the image on the PDA for a long moment. So long story short, I'm going to have to step out for a mission or two. I know how important it is that we resolve the fire Schwinge situation. I get it, but I can't just sit back and let this happen. She shakes her head, I won't. If it's at risk, it's too important. Job to rest on the shoulders of one person. I'm going with you, end of story. Alright, fearless leader, you're right. I could use the help, but the others, they can't know about this. This is going to have to be a quiet job, 2 people max. You sure you're prepared for this? If you can't hold up your end, I'll be better off on my own. Don't worry, I'm solid. Yeah, I know you are. Grab your things and meet me at the Darwin Keller. I've got a contact who's going to join us there, and he can help us figure out our next step. Glory's pallid face lights up as you approach. A genuine smile spreads across her lips. Richard, good to see you. You too, Glory, how are things with you? She pauses for a moment, considering, you know what, I'm happy actually. For the first time in a long time, I have you to thank for that. Are you ready to tell me about your Chrome sporting yet? Be patient, Richard, the explanation for that is coming. A look of unease fits across her face. I'm not sure that you're going to like it though. You need time. You needed time and I gave you. Are you ready to talk about? Yep. Glory looks troubled. More than you've ever seen her before. Whatever memory she's dredging up must be exceedingly painful. I'm not going to lie, I haven't been looking forward to this, but yeah, it's time. Richard, look, I'm about to tell you some things about myself that might change your opinion of me. It's entirely possible that you're going to hate me because of what's coming up next. I've accepted that. And if that's what happens, I sincerely believe that I deserve it. She looks you in the eye, her expression's grim. So tell me, are you sure that you want to keep pushing forward with this? This is clearly causing you pain, Glory. You know what? Let's back down from the storytelling. It's important. This is important for you, Glory. After everything we've been through, I think that we both know whatever you have to tell me, I'm ready to listen. Thanks for being a friend. So when we left off last time, I just moved from the streets of Tübingen to the warm, inviting confines of the Forestella. Martha and I were happy there for a little while, and Harrow embraced me as his long-lost daughter. I should probably take a moment to talk more about Harrow. He's going to be an important figure in this story. I don't know what his age was. He seemed old enough to be parental, but young enough to hang out with the kids on something like a peer level. But best guess, I'd say he was mid-20s. He was handsome and well-built, with a neatly trimmed beard and thick brown hair. And there was something else about him, something uncanny. Harrow had this charisma, this raw magnetic attraction that just made people latch onto him. I saw it over and over. All it took was a few words, a pat on the shoulder, and Harrow would have a new convert. The other kids at the farm followed him around like lost puppies. As much as I loved Martha, and as much as I thought she loved me, we forgot all about one another when Harrow was around. All that we wanted was to be close to him, to be part of his inner circle, and soon enough we were. For a girl of 17, it was all terribly exciting. Harrow had these rules of living that he would teach us, rules about self-determination and the importance of disobedience. He claimed to have taught classes at the University of Berlin, which he painted as a mix between an earthly paradise and an anarchist playground. He told us how Forstella would be the focal point of a new movement for the children of the fatherland. He told us that we were special. We ate it up, of course, we were kids. For those of us in the inner sanctum, Harrow would share even more. He had power of which I had never seen. Not my father's drunken fists or my own childish experiments, but genuine incredible power. He said that it came from the horned god, an ancient deity that was venerated. He knew about my latent abilities right away, and he offered to teach me. Naturally, I accepted. I've heard of this horned god. His followers have a poor reputation, especially among women. Miss Harrow is beginning to sound like a cult leader. Can't say I blame you in your position. I would have done exactly the same thing. Well, that's comforting to hear. I'm glad to know that someone as competent as you could make as abysmal a mess of life as I did. Glory sighs. Hang with me, Rich. Rough waters are ahead. So I became Harrow's apprentice. He taught me to channel magic and summon spirits. He taught me rituals and pagan traditions, Machiavellian philosophy, and Nietzschean's ethics. I think that's what it was. Above all, he taught me to connect with the horn god, and through it I learned power and arrogance, and it was all downhill from there. For the next few years, I lived at the Furistella as Harrow's enforcer and right-hand girl. I was also his sometimes wife and concubine, but that was a distinction that I shared with all of the girls in the commune, including my beloved Martha. I came to learn that she'd been his long before she met me, but by that point I didn't care. I embraced the rules of living. I was Harrow's creature through and through. I didn't ask questions, and I walked the path that was in front of me. Other fun facts about those years: I learned cruelty, I had power now, and my new idol encouraged me to use it. Harrow did the same. Any children who didn't pull their weight was subject to my tender mercies, and there was anything but tender. I took what I wanted rather than asking for it. I liked it, it was fun. I also came to learn Harrow's horn god was not the etching first worshipper by backthrown cults across Germany. It was certainly a god with horns, but it came from another altogether different tradition. Care to hazard a guess? The devil? In the magical active community we refer to it as the adversary. But yeah, same being more or less. So my idol, the ancient deity that was feeding me my power, was the anaesthetist of everything that is right and good. And you know what? I didn't care. In our time together, Harrow and I committed more atrocities than I can count. At this point, I was onto all of his tricks. I knew that the first Stella was nothing more than a honey trap, carefully designed to lure local children into my master's clutches. I knew that kids who seemed resistant to Harrow's brainwashing techniques would wound up fertilising the garden. I knew that Harrow's entire manifesto was bullshit, and I knew that through it all, Harrow and the adversary were laughing because it was laughing right there beside me. I don't want to pin the blame for my decisions on anyone but me. That said, I would like to posit that my father's connection to the Kreuzritters might have helped play into my willingness to serve the adversary. In my wrapped, indoctrinated little brain, I equated the church with evil, so the opposite of that I figured had to be, well, if not good, then at least not totally bad. But I was kidding myself, of course. My new deity was the very definition of bad. Serving it made me bad. End of story. I disagree with you, Glory. I don't think that any of this was your fault. Harrow is the one who deserves the blame. And what if he was indoctrinated into the service of the adversary? When he was my age, would he not be at fault anymore either? Shakes her head. No, Richard. Harrow certainly deserves some of the blame for what I became. Maybe even most of it, but personal responsibility has to come into the occasion somewhere. I made my own choices, and they were horrible ones. I accepted that. You should too. Glow pauses for a moment, collects herself. She looks haggard, and her pale cheeks are flushed blood red. She swallows hard and then presses forward. Anyway, one day Harrow invited me on a field trip to Stuttgart. Over the years that I was at Furnistella, the community had easily doubled in size. It was thrilling, all thanks to the efforts of Marta and the girls like her. Harrow would send girls out to neighbouring cities to lure in the street kids. Nobody would miss. He targeted children because they were easy to indoctrinate and because nothing makes the adversary happier than corruption of the innocent. As we drove out to pick up the new recruits, I was already planning ahead. It was a foregone conclusion that I would pay my father a visit. The irony of the group of the Carl's writers getting immolated by a genuine servant of the actual devil tickled me no end. So when Harrow stopped to fill up on diesel, I hopped out of the van and headed on foot to my parents' place. Harrow wasn't overly concerned about my absence. I had long since reached the point where I could assert my own autonomy, and he knew that I'd be back. I wound up at my folks' house sometime around noon. I could hear the adversaries whispering in my ear telling me what to do. I'd long since learned to listen to its voice. It's always rewarded me with extra power. When I did its bidding, it told me to knock, so I did. As the door opened, I could feel a torrent of flames welling up in the astral plane all around me. It told me to channel them into the doorway, into my father, so I did. But of course, the person who opened the door wasn't my father, it was my mother. As I watched her flesh blacken and melt, as I heard her scream, and I broke into hysterics, I heard the adversary laughing. At that moment I realised that it was laughing at me. I'm sorry. Glory nods, a grim expression on her delicate face. Thanks. We're almost at the end now. Thanks for sticking with me. It was like a lever had been pulled all at once. The bubble popped. I wasn't a powerful servant of the adversary. I was not Harrow's #1 girl. I was a ridiculous little fool who willingly tied his soul to the worst thing in existence. Realising all of this was one thing. Actually fixing it was something else entirely. I knew that I had to get away from Harrow. That was the first thing to do. So I bit my lip and did my best to ignore the happy babble of the new recruits on the trip back to the Furnistella, and I managed to get through the ride without screaming. Once we were back at the commune, I broke into Harrow's safe, stole all of the commune's resources and ran. I don't know when Harrow realised that what I'd done, or whether he even cared. All that I know is that nobody came after me, so I kept running until I got to Berlin. Getting past the wall was fairly simple. You know how easy it is to obtain falsified papers. The biggest obstacle that I faced during my flight was the adversary itself. I could run from Harrow, but I couldn't. But how do you run from something that's tied to your own soul? Oh God, Glory. That haunted look in Glory's eye is heartbreaking. She gives you another curt, grim nod. I walked into the office of the first street doc I could find, pointed at all of the biggest, bulkiest pieces of cyberware that he had on display and told him to put them into me. He tried to upsell me on better merchandise, arguing that what I was asking for was old and inefficient, better suited to be installed in a museum than in a body. He told me that I'd be shredding my essence, and that once it's gone I'll never be able to get it back. I stuck to my guns. After all, shredding my essence was the whole point. Glory looked up at you. Her eyes are sunken and hollow, and the aura of loss about her is palatable. She looks like a woman who has been through hell. That's all for now, Richard. You've heard the tale. You now know why I am the way I am. You know the things I've done, and how much I have to atone for. If you still want my company, fine. If I've lost your friendship, I understand that too. But for now, I need to be alone. Okay, let's go and check, see if there's any new weapons or stuff. I don't think there is. I could do with some new... I could do with some armour at least, I think. Meet without Iger's contact. I'm going to do Iger's mission, I think, next. And then we'll do the run on them. As you approach the counter, you find Absinthe reading a small soy casting booklet. The pages are old and weathered. Richard, when you speak with me... Wow, sorry, let's redo that. Richard, when you speak with the men who are not men, the fleshy puppets imprisoned behind glass, you must remember that they dream. They may not be real people by your definition of the term, but they do have dreams. That alone makes them worth saving. I'm looking to buy magic. And go and speak to Alan Orn. He's just around the corner. Be well, human. I'm looking to see what you've got. So weapons, outfits. So he's got nothing new. No new spells. Okay, let's head off. Head off and do Glory's mission. Iger's mission. Simi Kim leans against the wall, her head downcast and her face lost in shadow. Sensing her presence, she looks up, revealing black eyes poorly covered by concealer, and still she smiles at you. Hello Richard, how are you? Are you alright, Kim? I'm fine, just another day in Berlin. Something going on around here. There's always something going on in the flux, right? It gives, it takes. Sometimes it takes more than it gives, and some things it takes are gone forever. Friends that disappear, Monica, family that die, people like Monica. I don't much like the flux. In The Sims, you can have the same happy day over and over. You can skip past the parts you don't like, or replay the good moments as many times as you want. I can't think of any parts of real life I'd want to play over, and plenty of parts I wish I could skip. Take care of yourself, whatever I have to do. Dwarf has a distinctive Euro-Asian appearance. He peers up at Iger through almond-shaped eyes. The rest of his broad face is dominated by strong Slavic features. He nods to himself and puts down his mug of soy calf on the edge of the table. A plate of day-old pie cools in a haze of cigarette smoke. Hoi Iger, it's been a long time. He taps a thumb on the rim of his coffee mug, keep him busy. You could say that. Richard, this is Bannock. He's a friend. The dwarf scoffs. Don't know if I'd go that far. Nothing personally, understand. If I were to start keeping friends, I might call you one, but in my experience, friendship and obligation go hand in hand. A solitary life is cleaner. She smiles. Professional acquaintance then. Better. Now let's get down to business, shall we? Let's. We need intel on the engineer, where he's staying, who he's working for, how long he's been in Shannonest, whether you've got, we want it, whatever you've got, we want it. Speak English, come on. He spears a hunk of pie, what is that? With his fork, crams it into his mouth and starts chewing. A moment later he shrugs. I've had worse, and of course I'll give you what I can, but I don't know much. I can point you in the right direction, that's all. Just tell us what you can, we'll handle the heavy lifting. Dwarf nods, he fumbles into his jacket pocket for something. A moment later he produces a weathered papered map and spreads it out on the table. Alright, what you're looking at is the northwest quadrant of the Shadowrun nest. If that's how you say it. I have no idea. This is gang territory, all of it. These days the whole Kais is being held by Rambok. I've had a run-in with Rambok before, we can handle them. I'm surprised that there's enough left of them to hold up. I've heard that they've taken a hit a little while back. That was you, huh? Well, good on you, but you should know that they're still alive and well, and that the guy who's in charge over that gang's leadership is a real piece of work. If anything, they're worse than they were before. He stabs a meaty finger down at the faded silhouette of the building. The warehouse right here is the Rambok HQ, and that is where the engineer is staying. Wonderful. Iger exhales heavily. Ugh, my English is just horrid at the moment. And it's my only language. Bar a tiny little bit of Welsh. Right. If he's staying there, he must be arranging some sort of deal with them. That'll be the safe bet, and they haven't pulled their guns out on him yet. So it's fair to assume that negotiations are going well. I'm sure that I don't have to tell you this, but the last thing we need is an alliance between some foreign syndicate and the Rambok. No good will come of that. Can't argue with that. Now I can tell you that the engineer is working for. You'll have to ask him about that yourself, but what I can do is make it easier for you to have a sit down with him. Bennett reaches on the table and brings up a canvas bag. He places it in front of you and pushes it forward. Don't open that in here. There are people in this room who would kill you for what's in that bag. You gonna tell us what it is, or do we have to guess? He lowers his voice to a soft whisper. You have to lean in to hear him clearly. What you're going to find in there is a gadget about the size of a Walther pistol. It has a rubberized grip and a hair trigger, and it's good for one shot. Is this a stun gun? No. He pauses for a moment, playing with his fork. Well, not really. For your purposes, you might as well think of it as one, though. The object in question is a cyberware deactivator. I had it shipped here, a great personal expense from a Supermax prison in Newcastle. Traces it with a twirl in the air and a fork. The warden owed me a favour. Iger whistles appreciatively. Very nice, Bannock. That should make this easier. Not easy, possible. I wouldn't be giving it to you if the job could be done without it. The engine is rocking a Delta grade move by wire system. Unless you can shut it down, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to catch him. And if we do shut it down, you'll be forced into a state of permanent seizure. Shrugs. Only until he gets the thing up and running again. Deactivated isn't the same as broken. The dwarf shovels another heaping forkful of pie into his mouth. Chews thoroughly. Until then, his life will be a living hell, but I can think of worse things to use as a bargaining chip. Remember, you need to know who he works for. The more you can take him out of his comfort zone, the better. Sounds like we have a plan. Iger nods. Sounds that way, thanks, Bannock. We'll let you know how things work out. Don't bother, I'll be watching. Okay, so let's do this run. We'll get this run done. Call Iger and travel to the location of the engineer. Confirm. You're ready to travel. Confirm. The Shadowrun nest. The Kai's is next door to the Kiribati, and an object lessening anarchy gone wrong. Violent gangs rule the streets here. Trading territory to the roar of gunfire. The streets are a war zone. As dangerous as the scatter nest already is, it could be worse. The gangs are vicious but disorganised. They pose little risk to their neighbours. With little more than a makeshift barricade, a few volunteers, the Kiribati has successfully insulated itself from the chaos of the neighbouring Kais. The engineer could change all of that. He has to be stopped, and the F-state as a whole needs to be alerted to what his clients are trying to do. It's up to you, and I get to make sure that happens. Cool. So we'll confirm that. I'm going to take a quick break and go to the toilet, and then I'll be back on in about 10 minutes. As you near the edge of the Kiribati, the familiar piss and asphalt stench of the shatter nest crawls into your nostrils and sticks into the back of your throat. The dilapidated husks of burnt out buildings loom above you, giving the place an air of menace. I was hoping I'd put this place behind me after the Humanist run. Yeah, I'm with you there. She wrinkles her nose. Funny thing is, Syndicate's presence might actually help Scaternest in the short term at least. They've cleaned up the streets if nothing else. In any case, maybe we should just forget about this. Don't tell me you've changed your mind. Not for a second. Any syndicate in Shatness would be a disaster. For that home, whatever it is. I don't actually know how to say it. Let the people on the other side of the gate deal with their own problems. I won't allow my home to be endangered for their sake. Okay, I'm going to pop to the toilet and then I'll be back on. About 10 minutes I think. Get a drink and go to the toilet and do all stuff, and then we'll finish this run off.